line now. Here we go. Coming in here in 5, 4, 3.
I am so happy that everyone has joined us today. For you guys that are viewing and for everybody here that's in the room, I am wicked excited to share this amazing information. So let's get this started. Okay, and also I just want to thank you guys very much for the indulgence of this opportunity to have this recorded and everything. It's going to be really fun. We're going to have lots of interactive stuff. I'm going to give you a little bit of my background of who I am and what I do, and then I'll give you an overview of the talk. Okay? And what this does is it helps me bring down my cortisol level. I know it might sound kind of weird because I do a lot of public speaking, but I always get anxious before I present. But the anxiety, it's not even anxiety, the stress that I feel when I present is not the stress that we're going to be talking about today and making the connections of how we need to mitigate that. That's toxic stress. The stress that I'm having actually is positive stress. We have an HPA axis response when we're about to do something exciting. And what that does is it, kicks in cortisol, lots of, I can't even think of all the different mediators now because I'm so nervous, but it jazzes me up so that I have the energy to present to you in an enthusiastic, inspired way that engages your learning. So when I get to talk a little bit, it actually kind of lets my cortisol level kind of equilibrate. So my name is Mary Coughlin. My background is a neonatal nurse practitioner, and I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I served 7 years of active duty in the Air Force Nurses Corps after I graduated nursing school from Northeastern University. It was an amazing experience. During that time, I never really knew there was much outside of Massachusetts, and my first duty assignment was in San Antonio, Texas, which I don't know about you guys, but it was a wicked culture shock for me. I had never seen real cowboys, cowboy hats, the whole 9 yards. I learned how to do the two-step, and there was a couple of other really exciting dances that I learned while I was down there. Then I was stationed in California, at David Grant Medical Center out by halfway between San Francisco and Sacramento, right outside of the Wine Valley, the Napa region and stuff like that. It was really gorgeous, completely different than New England. And then my last tour of duty, I came back to New England and was assigned at Portsmouth, New Hampshire, the Pease Air Force Base, where it was a 30-bed hospital. And I don't know if you guys can imagine something like this, because I had always worked on floors that were 30 beds or more, right? But this was a whole hospital comprised of 30 beds. And it was all well baby and well people kind of stuff. And I did labor and delivery, postpartum, and newborn nursery, which was a real kick because I became a Nicu nurse during my tour in the military and was not mentally or clinically prepared for that challenge. But it was really awesome. And then I transitioned to my civilian experience at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. Okay? I did that for a long time. And then got a little bit of itchy feet. I think I got the itchy feet from being in the service, because the service moves you every 3 years. And decided I had to do something else, and I tried teaching. So I did a year at the Bunker Hill Community College, where I taught adult nursing students, people that were going into a second career. It was a really cool opportunity, and discovered that teaching really aligned with my purpose and what I really loved. So I tried to figure out how can I do that in a meaningful way for NICU clinicians, because my heart and soul is all about the neonate and the clinicians that serve that unique patient population. So I took a gig with Children's Medical Ventures. Are you guys familiar with Children's Medical Ventures? They make the pacifiers, and at the time they were really famous for Preemie for a Day and their We Care program. And so I got to work with this team, national consultants that, again, were interdisciplinary folks that were passionate about developmentally supportive care. And we branched out to also embrace a group of international clinicians. So we had on board folks from Belgium, France, the UK, Germany, Spain, Portugal, and it was amazing. It was a really amazing experience, and I really uncovered a deeper understanding about the clinical relevance and the biological relevance of developmentally supportive care. So that kind of experience imploded. We'll just call it what it is. It imploded, and I needed to get a job quick because I still had to pay the mortgage. And while I was trying, in the meantime, trying to figure out how to do the work that I was doing at Children's Medical Ventures, but with my style on it for the rest of my life. That was really what I wanted to do. So I can feel it's coming down. My heart rate's coming down. Everything's all good. We're almost out of the woods with this diatribe here. And so I found a job, and you'll probably giggle a little bit, but at a local hospital that was within walking distance from my house, which was wicked cool. I don't know if you guys get to walk to work here. I mean, I'd never walked to work. But this was within a mile. Sometimes I biked and stuff. The only glitch was that it was a grown-up hospital. So the hospital was half med-surg, ICU, ED, all grown-ups, and the other half was psych. And they had an inpatient adolescent psych unit, adult, and then an older adult unit. And I thought, that's okay. I was applying for the job. It was called Director of Professional Practice, Education and Research. It was like the coolest title for me, at least, on the planet. And it was in grown-ups, and they actually hired me, which blew me away. I basically pitched developmentally supportive care for grown-ups. You know, when you think about HCAPs and all that kind of stuff, it totally resonated with them, fortunately, and I was so proud of myself that I was able to swing that. So, but my mission for that was to really just understand the workings of a hospital environment, right? What's the administrative responsibilities of managing education, engaging staff, all that kind of stuff. So, it was a method to my madness, you know, to kind of take this job and figure out what it was that I was going to do. So while I was doing this job, and it was mostly administrative, you know, like just check off and make sure everybody did their annual competencies and they had what they needed to meet their licensure requirements and stay employed and all that other kind of cool stuff. And the team that I worked with was this super brilliant clin spec who did ICU and ED, another super brilliant chick who was a psych clin spec, and then an amazing, lovely woman who was in charge of med-surg. So like I had all the bases covered, so I was good to go. Until one day I get called into my boss's office, and my boss was the CNO, and she says, "Mary, sit down." I'm like, oh crap, like, am I fired? Like what? She says, "We have a bit of an issue on the adolescent psychiatric unit." And I knew that, you know, but I thought, well, that's not my problem, that's your problem, you know. I'm really sorry, but, you know, and she said, and so we need you to step in as the interim nurse manager on the adolescent psych unit. So, after I like woke up, I was like totally apoplectic because I have no psych background at all. I think I was sobbing a little bit, and I looked at her and I said, "Why me? Why me?" She said, "Well, to be perfectly honest, you're the only person in the house with pediatric experience. Are you guys all NICU nurses? I mean, not NICU nurses, NICU clinicians?" Like, I never in my life ever thought of myself as a pediatric person, ever. I'm a NICU person, right? We're different. And it doesn't matter that NICU is a subspecialty of pediatrics. It doesn't matter. It is special. But for grown-up people, they just put us all in that one big bucket of pediatrics. So after I kind of recovered and pulled myself together, I thought, okay, sure. Obviously, I'll do it. I didn't have much of a choice. And it was kind of a double whammy, because not only was it psych, but it was also this interim nurse manager job. And for to do the nurse manager job, I'd never done that job. And it takes a special talent, right? There's a unique constellation of skills that I believe you have to have in order to do that. And I just felt like, yeah, that's not my cup of tea. I'm just going to have to wing this. So the first day I go on the duty, there is a method to my madness here, okay? So hang with me. I figured, okay, I'm the interim nurse manager. I got to look the part. So I went to my closet and dusted off my my lab coat, because when I was a nurse practitioner, I loved my lab coat, right? And I feel like it makes you feel like cool, and it makes you feel smart, and like you got your together kind of a thing. And it has, you know, deep pockets, you know, so you're always prepared for stuff. So I put all the stuff that I thought I would ever need, like scissors, tapes. So I had the stethoscope around my neck because I really wanted to look the part. And I'm about to go to the door, and you had to badge in because this is a locked unit. And I've never been in a locked unit except for nursing school, so I really did not know what I was about to come into. And so I'm about to badge, and my friend, who's the clin spec, she goes, "Oh my God, what are you doing? You can't go in there dressed like that." I'm like, what do you mean? You know, I mean, I thought it was looking pretty good. You know, it was clean, I had the stethoscope and everything. She goes, "You're gonna freak everybody out on that unit going in like that. That this is a psych unit. You have to be you. You have to just go in there and walk among these people and not be threatening. And which was really weird, because I was thinking, I'm not threatening. Like, what are you kidding me? You know, I'm so wicked nice, you know? So I took off the lab coat, and I'll be honest with you, I felt really vulnerable when I took that coat off, and I was about to walk into a setting that I had never worked in before, and she just wanted me to be me. And that scared me a little bit, because I don't know what me is, or, you know, I mean, at that time, in that setting. So I walked in, and she was really wonderful, and she coached me through these concepts that if there are therapists in the room, you totally get this idea of the therapeutic use of self. But as a nurse, and I don't know if any of the other nurses learned this, I never learned that. I learned you have a bunch of things that you have to get done, you have to do them perfectly, and you know all this stuff, and that's what you do. And you're just the vehicle to get all this stuff done. But this idea of the therapeutic use of self, where I'm actually part of the therapy, I'm part of the healing, was really a new concept to me. But they coached me and mentored me, and as I worked in that setting for just 4 months, I met children that had the most profound level of critical illness. That working in a Nicu or PICU, any kind of like a medical or surgical ICU, you can tell how critically ill somebody is by a quick look. How much equipment are they hooked up to? Right? How many people are fluttering around their bed space? That gives you an indication of how sick they are. But in this setting, there was no equipment. There were no lines, there were no tubes, there was none of that stuff. But there were these children. They were aged 13 to 18. We had a couple 12-year-olds occasionally, but primarily 13, that were profoundly critically ill, but on the inside. And you couldn't see it, but you could feel it. And it was kind of in that moment, and over the days after that and months after that, that I became just nuts about this concept of trauma-informed care, and started really drawing connections between what I learned in that setting and what I know about the neonatal intensive care unit, and started thinking about the other work that I've done around, you know, the core measures, for example, you know, that we're going to talk about over the course of the day, really trying to identify those disease-independent care actions that we bring to the service to these patients, right? But in order to do that authentically, you have to be fully present. You have to be mindful. And from my nursing brain, that was like really tripping me out, because I'm used to doing to. I'm used to checking off my list. And now you want me to be with also? Like, gee whiz, I don't know if I have enough time for that. You know, I mean, not to be fresh, but that's kind of like initially I was trying to figure out how to process this and how to integrate it. And so I started diving into the research and really trying to understand it and make the connections between developmentally supportive care and this idea of trauma-informed care. And the research has validated really everything that I was starting to understand about what the experience may be like for a critically ill infant at whatever gestational age, whatever diagnostic criteria. It didn't matter. That being separated from their mother, having repeated painful procedures, having bright lights, having unmanaged or undermanaged pain, having sleep perturbations, right? Fragmented sleep or sleep deprivation, having aberrant sensory experiences, not just light and sound, but maybe smell and taste. Think about all the instrumentation that we do to these individuals. That all of this elicits a toxic stress response. So it's my experience jacked up 30,000 times. And so that's really, you know, the purpose of me creating this master series is really to connect the dots, not only biologically, not only clinically, but also from a humanitarian perspective too. Because if you can't bring your real self to that care encounter every time, you're really doing the patient and the family a disservice. And you know, more importantly, you're doing yourself a disservice. Nursing, you know, I can speak, you know, specifically from my nursing hat, that, you know, we don't honor the fact that we bear witness to the most horrific thing that can happen to human beings, right? getting myself all worked up, sorry about that, but to have your baby be critically ill. So we need to figure out how to reconnect with our soul and really be able to operationalize these best practices that are going to transform everything for the patient, for the family, and for yourselves as well. Okay, cortisol level, check, all right, okay, tears, check. Okay, so let me just grab my clicker and we'll get rolling, okay? There's a video that I'm going to share with you guys that I think it's supposed to come right on, good, that really goes into more detail about this, much better than myself.
Are you sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus-pituitary-adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are swapped. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after her. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable. It's not all bad news though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control of you.
So, and that, you know, I liked that film because I usually show films that focus just on the baby and the baby's brain response to stress. But I felt that this was pretty impactful because the more I think about trauma-informed care and the more I share this concept with my colleagues, the more I think the obvious nature of the work that we do starts to surface, right? How many of you guys get stressed out at work? If you're not raising your hand, I know you're fibbing, okay? I mean, because the work that we do is stressful by nature for a variety of different reasons, and quite often compounded by whatever the heck else you've got going on, you know, at home before you even get there. And so not taking stock in that and not honoring that really impedes your ability to be that authentic healing presence, you know, when you're providing the care for your patients. So I thought, you know, that this was a really great way of connecting the dots. The environment that we work in is toxic, certainly to the babies, also to their families, but to you guys as well. And taking note of that is really, really important if you're going to transform the environment and transform not only the experience of care for the patient, but for yourselves as well. So this masterclass is focusing on the healing environment core measure, and so that's where all the work is going to be around. And so what I want to do is I want to just kind of give you some of the backdrop of what does the current research tell us about that environment and toxic stress and the vulnerability of the patient population that we serve. And so this team here, Monterosi and Provenzi, do I have their name there on the way bottom there? I got to meet Dr. Monteroso at the Science and Soul Conference, the first annual conference for trauma-informed neuroprotective care that we had in February in Bruges, Belgium. And this guy is a super psycho-brainiac. He does research on the epigenetic impact of toxic stress, as well as other factors around developmentally supportive care. And how he views developmentally supportive care is as a key intervention to mitigate the is bit of being in the Nicu, right? How many of you guys have heard your colleagues say, when we start talking about developmental care, they're like kind of go, I'm trying to save a life here. We'll do that stuff later. I have no time for that. That's the fluff. Because they're all focused on that life and death situation. And I'm not minimizing that. I get it. It's serious business what we do. People can die under our care. But it can't be either or. I can't just take care of your disease. Because you are a vulnerable developing human being. You are a complex, dynamic organism that isn't just about your lungs or your brain. It's about your wholeness as an individual. And if I don't attend to those other dimensions, I am setting you off on a bad trajectory. And remember when they talked about the rat bit, you know, the nurturing rats, those babies had more stress tolerance, and then the neglected rats, they were stress intolerant. That's the same thing with babies. And I'm going to share some pretty striking outcomes that are associated with individuals who experience NICU without quality developmentally supportive care. But how he does this is, you can see, he talks about that there is a certain phenotype of the premature infant. That's that vulnerability, not only physiologically, like from a thermal perspective, from a pulmonary perspective, you know, depending on what their situation is, from a CNS perspective as well, but also from those dimensions that require connection and a sense of safety. If you look back or you kind of rewind your playbook on the stuff that you learned in preparation for, you know, your training as a healthcare professional, remember Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. And that first year is all about trust versus mistrust. And as developing human beings, mammals across, you know, I mean, as a species, require this sense of connection. And they learn that by how the world makes them feel. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later. Is the world safe? And if it's safe, I move through the world a certain way. If I don't have to worry about my survival or being warm or anything like that, I'm going to learn and reach out to the world. But if I have to worry about everything, and this is not a worry like on our cognitive level, right? It's a very simplistic, primitive way of worrying, if you will. But if I have that sense of insecurity and the separation, think about the rat image with the mother rat disappearing, then I'm going to walk through the world a different way. And that may seem like not a big deal coming out of the gate in the NICU, but the long-term implications will blow your mind. And they not only undermine the quality of this individual as one entity, but also as a dyadic unit with the family, and then a greater part of the community, and then the society at large. And so when you start looking at like the World Health Organization, they keep data on different, disease pathologies, incidences of a variety of different complications and that sort of thing. And they have this term that they coined called the burden of disease. And so certain diseases have a burden not only on the individual, but on society at large. And it runs the gamut, like diabetes, obesity, all this kind of stuff, but also prematurity. And there is a significant burden of disease associated with prematurity, but actually any kind of neonatal complication. And what we're seeing now in the projections for health outcomes to 2030 is that we're seeing more prematurity, more neonatal complications, and down the road we're seeing a huge increase in the incidence of significant psychopathology. Behavioral perturbations, schizophrenia, major depression, all these really bad players. And so one has to start asking the question, are these initial human encounters then relevant? And what role do we play in that experience? And that role is part of the environment. When we look at what the core measures really articulate, it's not just the physical space, but the environment is physical, but it's also human and relational, and then of course organizational. And I'll take you through all that. But before that, I didn't want to jump ahead, but this was an excellent paper by Tronick and Beagley. So Ed Tronick is a psychologist and a researcher out of UMass Boston, University of Massachusetts in Boston. He's done lots of research looking at the effect of maternal depression on the developing infant. And in the pursuit of that understanding, he also discovered then the sensory capabilities and the awareness of the infant to the relational encounter. And he did this really cool experiment. It's called the still face experiment. And it was a healthy child, right? Because I mean, you need to have a healthy child when you're doing these things to get a baseline of what the capabilities are of people that are in a healthy situation. So he does this really cool experiment, and he's got this really cute little baby. He's probably about 8 months, sitting in a little baby chair, and the mummy's playing with the baby, and they're engaging and cooing and all this stuff. And you know how little kids are, they're like, and playing with the mother and stuff. And then they ask the mother to put on a still face, to not engage with the baby. And you immediately see the baby realizes something has changed. And it's the most startling thing that the baby just kind of goes, and then the baby starts to actively try and re-engage the mother. The baby smiles, right? I mean, because we're suckers for baby smiles, right? Smiles at the mother, reaches out for the mother, and then something starts happening inside the infant where the baby is now starting to feel the stress that there's a change in the dynamic. And it goes on, it only lasts for 2 minutes, and then you see the baby just decompensate, and the baby starts crying, and then the mother can then engage, they stop the experiment, and the mother re-engages with the infant, and then the baby immediately is like, oh, I love you, kind of a thing. And that what that represents is a healthy situation, all right? Because bad things happen, right? There's stress that happens. Mom has to go to the supermarket and leave the baby with somebody else, right? Stress happens in life. But as long as you have a secure attachment, the child will be able to overcome those little bits of stress, interspersed stress, which is actually healthy, because stress helps us grow and adapt to new experiences. Like the stress that I had at the very beginning of this talk. I had to really get a sense of, who are you guys? Is this going to be okay? Are you going to, feel engaged and that sort of thing? And then I start to get a sense from you guys. It's nothing that anybody said, but I start to feel more comfortable with you because you're not throwing tomatoes at me and you're all looking at me, and it's a good thing. So it's that kind of a thing that we develop that sense of connection, and it's oftentimes nonverbal. Now take that and bring it into the NICU, where we have these individuals across the gestational range of people that we serve, but they may not have the strength or the maturity to engage with us in a way that tells us that they're connecting with us, right? And I think that's what really has historically put us in a kind of in a bad place in really understanding the humanity, the depth of the humanity of these individuals. Because I'll tell you, truth be told, when I would come on shift, I'd come up to the NICU, I'd say hi to Zelda. She was ward clerk, you know, walk into the unit, take a left, go down the corridor, down to the triage room where we had the assignment board. I would look at the assignment board for 3 things. If you heard me talk about this, you already know. I would look to see what room am I in, what patients do I have, and who am I working with? Because who am I working with is going to make or break the next 12 hours of my life, right? And so then I would come on into the room, and maybe I have 3 8-11-2-5s. And for folks that don't know 8-11-2-5s, right, that's when the babies are due up, right? And we decide when they're due up, not them. Baby doesn't decide. We're in charge. We're driving this car. And we just belly on up to the incubator, right? And I want to start a little bit early because I've got 3 people. Fortunately, they're all in a row. I belly on up, pop the doors in, reach in, flip strips, start doing them up, listening, getting all the stuff done. The baby is doing something like this. You know, I mean, some kind of behavioral expression of maybe they're not too pleased with what's going down right now. And my response is generally, hang in there, I'm almost done, you know, blah, blah, blah. Then I reposition them because I want to be developmentally supportive. Put the blankets on them, nail them in, right? Make sure the stripes on the blankets are all going in the right direction and everything. You know, we're crazy people. But I believe, right, if you look good, you feel good. And I certainly feel good because you look great. And I know my colleagues are going to go by and go, oh, doesn't she make a nice bed? Doesn't that patient look nice and comfy, right? And it doesn't matter what the patient probably passed out because I was just going so fast. And so those are the kinds of things that we really need to change, because what I'm telling that baby while I'm doing them up and just I'm driving the car is you're not important. You're just here, you know, and I've got to get this stuff done. And I know we do have a ton of stuff to get done. And it really is hard with lots of competing priorities. But we really need to take a step back and re-examine how we can do this in a more mutually collaborative way with the patient. Because the message that I'm sending to that patient is, you're not important. I'm not connected with you because you're not important because I've got to do all these other things. And these experiences that happen to the babies, they are fundamental to how they are going to view what is the world like. Is the world cool, fun, safe, engaging, awesome? Or is the world scary, aggressive? Does it hurt? Does it make you feel scared? Because if it's all of that stuff, and it's repeated, right? Because you're going to get done up at least how many times on my shift, and my colleagues are going to do the same thing. It gets repeated, right? Think about Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together, wire together. And so what I'm doing is I'm just sealing the deal on this, right? The world is wicked scary, be scared all the time, and nobody likes you. And that, I mean, I know it sounds kind of glib, but that's what happens inside their brain. Again, go back to that video when you see about the stress and how that chronic stress actually leads to depression. One of the primary psychopathologies that emerge in infants that were cared for in the Nicu is depression. And I had this amazing experience to do a talk with a couple of moms of former premature people at CHAD, Children's in Dartmouth, New Hampshire. And they had videos of their children, and the children now were teenagers. And all of them had at least 1 year of depression. And I don't know what that means, you know, I mean, like I can feel bummed out, but they were talking about clinical depression, and they were so genuine in how they expressed what that felt like inside them, right? Like, you know, just, it's not like you will see them withdrawn, you will see, you know, these like, you know, sterile symptoms. It was that experience of how painful it was to even get out of bed, want to do anything, want to breathe. You know, just this for a year. You know, they lived this way for a year and had to, you know, have medications and therapy and all that other kind of stuff. But that, again, that's from that toxic stress, that separation, that interpretation at that very vulnerable period of time that says the world's scary and it can hurt you. And these experiences are all laid down. Can you see how this brain is? So the neocortex, that's our smart rationalizing part of the brain. And the brainstem, that's, you know, think about that. That's your autonomic nervous system. That's your vagus nerve. Those are the feelings that you were having when you had the mask on. And you weren't articulating anything. It was just happening to you, called neuroception. That's what that is all about. And these babies experience that every single day. So What's really cool for us, I feel, right now as neonatal clinicians is there has been just this amazing outpouring of research now from molecular biologists, geneticists, developmental pediatricians, psychologists, nurse researchers, the gamut, that have now informed the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they have now identified a new model, a new paradigm to define the science of pediatrics, and they're calling it the eco-biodevelopmental model. They actually even, just as a side note, if you really want to nerd out on this subject, the Academy has published a technical report talking about the implications of toxic stress to young children and the role of the pediatric clinician. And I always think about, okay, I'll be a pediatric clinician now because, again, it's that bigger umbrella, and it gives us the opportunity to take a step back and ask, what's the role of the neonatal clinician then in light of all of this burgeoning science? And so what they're saying is the ecology, which is the environment, that social and physical environment affects the biology of the individual. It causes disruptions. There's some degree of adaptations, but not all adaptations are positive. Babies adapt to the way they have to be in that moment. And sometimes the way they adapt is they give up, right? We've seen these babies that you go in, you're going to go do something up to them, and you're trying to restrain them, and all of a sudden they just they go limp. And you're like, oh, yay! I can go and do my thing without fussing with the baby. But in fact, that giving up is a really bad sign. It's a really bad sign. That baby, they need a complete timeout. They need some kangaroo care. They need some boatloads of love to try and restore themselves and get that sense of connection and safety. It's the connection and safety that we really need to foster in our environments. There's actually an excellent paper by Marilyn Sanders, and it talks about trauma-informed care paradigm and its role in explaining connection with our biology using the polyvagal theory and super nerdy stuff that's wicked fascinating. And so these biological perturbations and adaptations then influence the rest of their developmental trajectory, right? I mean, so we're always building and growing on our experiences from a health and wellness perspective, not just physical, but also psychological and emotional. Is everyone doing okay? Do you have any questions? All right, cool beans. And again, coming back to the Italian researchers, who I have a massive crush on, they're so prolific in their research and really want to understand the implications of this toxic stress. These are the guys that have started looking at these epigenetic alterations. And so what happens, in the video they mentioned, so the genetic code doesn't change. But the genome, all right, the way certain proteins and certain genes are turned on and off are influenced by the environment, by chemicals, by your history, by your nutrition, by pain, through just a myriad of things that influence us, that cause us to adapt, right? I mean, if you're in a cold environment, right? So living up in New England, after a while, my cold regulator changes, right? And 50 degrees feels really, really warm to me. And so in the winter, if we have a day that is 50 degrees, people literally are going to wear shorts. Now down here, or out here, where am I? Out here, it's a different situation, right? It might get 50 and you guys are going, oh, I need to put my socks on. I need a sweater, right? So those are adaptations that are an expression of how you deal with the environment, right? It's a simple thing, right? Regional, but also individual. And so it can be frustrating because you want it to just go, tell me what to do, Mary, and I'll just do it. But I can't. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. The one thing that I can tell you to do is be authentic. Be present with the patient in the moment of care. Be with them and help them know that you are caring for them in a meaningful way. So here's the outcomes, all right? These are disease-independent outcomes that have been captured related to individuals that have had a Nicu experience, prematurity, and even, the Marino group here was congenital heart disease. And so we know that individuals that are born premature, 50 to 70% of these individuals at 2 years of age demonstrate internalizing and externalizing problems, as well as symptoms of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. What folks now are doing as they look at this constellation of symptoms that represents attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, if that individual has a medical history, a Nicu or PICU history, they're looking at those behaviors now through a trauma lens. That in fact now the big question that's being investigated is, are we actually seeing PTSD in these Nicu and PICU survivors? And so then there is a completely different therapeutic approach if it's PTSD versus ADHD. And internalizing and externalizing behaviors, those are really interesting terms, because what they do is they describe the way the child is acting, but they are precursors to psychopathology. So internalizing behaviors are being withdrawn, right? That's the hallmark of how you assess the infant. They seem very withdrawn, like too shy kind of a picture. And those can be a precursor to anxiety disorders and depressive disorders. Externalizing behaviors, those are the acting out, the angry, the mad, the kind of aggressive types of behaviors that you can see. And these are in 18 to 24-month people. And these are precursors to things like oppositional defiant disorder that then can go on to become also anxiety, can also be associated with schizophrenia, but it is something that alters their ability to move through the world. These children, they have problems with their ability to regulate their emotions. They are stress intolerant. And that stress intolerance was cultivated due to early life experiences, or this other term that folks are now using called early life adversity. Is anyone here familiar with the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experiences Study? No? This was really, it began in the late 1990s. And it was a really serendipitous discovery by a team of physicians who were working in Kaiser Permanente out in California. And they were working on obesity. And they had developed a pretty cool program, I don't know the details, but it was a pretty cool program to manage obesity, and they were having success. And it was multidisciplinary, and everything was really going great, and they were seeing great success. They were patting themselves on the back, getting ready to publish the big paper and just be the next big thing. And one of the patients came in and started having some challenges, wasn't making the progress that she had been making before. And I think she started at some place like 300 pounds or 400 pounds or something, and was making the steady progress, but then started to gradually kind of pivot off and actually was gaining a little bit of weight. So, came back in for a checkup. They're interviewing her, trying to understand. She's like, no, I think I'm following, the diet and the regimen and blah, 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 blah. I'm not sure what's going on. He said, okay, come back in a month. The woman came back in a month, and she had gained almost 50 pounds in 30 days' time, which is pretty challenging to do. And so the medical team were like, all right, the gloves are off. We've got to figure out what this is all about. So they all sat together and had, they have kind of like a group discussion with the patient, and then she goes off and she speaks with individuals and stuff. As it turns out, what they uncovered was that she had a history of molestation by an older family member when she was a child. She's now an adult, she's losing this weight, and apparently one of her older co-workers started hitting on her. And it triggered a trauma memory. And she started going back to those behaviors that kept her hidden, kept her, invisible was the word that she used. And so they were like, oh my gosh, what is this? Is this too true and unrelated? Or is there something to this? So what they decided to do is they decided to survey the network. And they have 17,000 members in that Kaiser Permanente healthcare network. So they created this survey, and it was called the ACE questionnaire. ACE is Adverse Childhood Experiences. And there was 10 questions on it. And it asked things about physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, physical neglect, emotional neglect? Was there a fragmented family? Was there divorce? Was there mental health or drug addiction or anything like that in the family? Was a parent incarcerated? You know, so they kind of posed these questions, and it was simple yes or no, yes or no. So 17,000 people took this quiz, right? They were middle class, predominantly white respondents to this survey, and they had 84% of the respondents, it was all anonymous too, 84% had more than one ACE recorded. What they noticed is once people started having 4 or more ACEs, things started getting really interesting, and they were correlating that history, that ACE history, with their current medical situation. And what they found was with the people that had 4 or more ACEs, they had like a 350% increased risk of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. They had, it was like 400 and something increased risk for diabetes. They had a 1,200% increased risk for suicide and a 5,000% increased risk, 5,000, all right? I don't even know what that looks like, percent increased risk for IV drug abuse. And there was a whole bunch of other stuff that I can't really remember. Go on the CDC website and look up ACE and you'll find all the information. So they were like, all right, this is obviously something. We need to replicate this. And it has been replicated across different demographics, in different countries. And the first publication was, I think, 98. And it has all come and validated and verified that there is absolutely a connection between adversity in childhood and these morbidities. And so we now know this, right? And so once you know, you can't unhear this stuff that I'm telling you. I mean, you don't have to necessarily believe me. You can go verify it, but you can't unhear it. And you need to do something with this information. And the goal of this is to do something, is to take action and change. So that's, kind of the long story of that first bullet there on the left. Researchers, I was also wondering, so are term people also challenged with this vulnerability? And so Marino et al., they looked at a cohort of term individuals that were hospitalized for congenital heart disease, all different kinds. And what they found was that the longer their hospital stay or the post-op course, the higher their risk was for neurodevelopmental compromise. And then beyond that, when people start looking at the link between prematurity and adolescent suicide, that's this first bullet here, the risk of cardiovascular disease, obesity, and metabolic syndrome. Triples, doubles, it's like a ridiculous amount. And I want you to take that fact and align it with our practice in the NICU, which I hope is going away. But when I was a baby NICU nurse, I could feed a rock. You give me 30 mLs, don't worry. I will empty that bottle into the sleeping head of any baby you put in my arms. Thinking I was doing the right thing. And just, you'd be amazed at what you can drain into the head of a sleeping baby. But what do I do with that experience? Why is that baby sleeping? They're not sleeping. They've basically lost consciousness. I have created an unsafe situation, and they have removed themselves from that situation. Why do you think that they're squirting the milk out in the sides of their mouths? Because they can't protect their airway. And we're getting all frustrated because we know that the doctor wrote for X amount of bottle volume, X amount of times, and they can go home on the weekend. But what, these experiences, and these are environmental experiences, right? They're relational experiences. I'm the grown-up, you're the baby. I'm supposed to keep you safe. And I'm compromising your airway by draining, the bottle in. So it's, again, being aware of these things. These individuals then go off, they're not exactly sure of the etiology, but they know that there is a link to obesity and metabolic syndrome and premature individuals. There's a group that's looking at that leptin-ghrelin balance, those hormones for satiety and hunger. Well, they don't factor into, it's 8 o'clock, it's time to feed you. I don't care what your leptin levels are, right? I mean, so again, we are in a desperate situation to shift a paradigm to help the future of everybody, of the world, right? I mean, I know this sounds dramatic, but it is dramatic because we've got people out there that have altered feeding behaviors because of this. These individuals, once they become volitional eaters, they say, yeah, screw that. Don't even bring that near my mouth because that is too unsafe. You've seen this if you've worked in follow-up clinic. You hear about it from your friends. And they end up going to have a gastrostomy tube because anything in the mouth is scary. Now, how devastating is that? I mean, that would not be a joyful life for me. You know, I mean, that we're supposed to nurture that. We're supposed to protect them. Remember our first admonition as professionals, do no harm. And do no harm goes well beyond medication errors and CLABSIs. Do no harm is preserving the whole integrity of these amazing people that we're blessed to serve. And then the final bullet here, this is newer information, which I found really interesting, is looking at the association of prematurity and fibromyalgia and central sensitizing syndromes. So central sensitizing syndromes, those run the gamut from like functional pain disorders that you see in young children. You know, they've got belly pain and they can't find anything wrong, but they've got belly pain. The link between that is unmanaged or undermanaged pain during the neonatal period. What it does is it just ratchets up the sensitivity of the nociceptor system. Because the nociceptor system shouldn't be activated, right? I mean, your nociceptive system, your pain receptive system, the sole purpose of it is to keep you safe, right? If you touch the hot pot, you know, you pull away. It's not to be constantly, consistently exposed to pain. And so what happens is the body says, something's failing. We better get really sensitive and jacked up because pain's everywhere and we're not responding. We're not being able to help ourselves. And this is how it evolves and manifests itself. Other central sensitizing symptoms, though, are also reflux, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, you know, all of those GI things. Again, making the connection between that enteric nervous system and the central nervous system and how there's that feedback. And don't even get me started on the microbiome, because that's also another piece of this puzzle that feeds our central nervous system and helps us understand how we walk through the world and how we maintain and preserve our own health and wellness. You guys doing all right? Any questions? You sure? All right, okay. All right. And now, I mean, this, it was finding this article when I was fresh off of that community hospital experience, when I was that interim nurse manager on the psych unit, to really try and understand, is there a connection? And sure enough, this guy here, no SARDI at all. And you can see, right, the more premature you are, the increased risk you have. And schizophrenia, depression disorder, and bipolar disease, those are quality of life busters. There's, you know, I mean, you can manage them on medication, but they've completely changed how you will walk through your life and how you will walk through that life with or without somebody, right? With family. I mean, there's lots of compounding trauma that these individuals have to experience due to isolation because of their disease and challenges around, I mean, we use that word compliance and non-compliance like it's their own, like they have a decision to make, like they're choosing to be sick, but they're not, they're sick at their core. And, you know, how do we help these individuals? And I'm obsessed with Dr. Seuss, just heads up, because I'm from Massachusetts. To the world you may be only one person, but to one person you may be the world. And that is what we do. We are the world to these little people. We are the world to these families. We need to honor that. That is a huge, noble calling, and do it right. And so how do we do this now? How do we create and sustain transformational change using evidence-based practice? Here we go. It's Brene Brown.
So I do a search for Theodore Roosevelt, 1910. And the quote that came up changed my life. And it's the Daring Greatly quote. It's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The critic belongs to the person who's in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who in the end may know the triumph of high achievement. But when he fails, he does so daring greatly. And so 3 things totally shifted in my life that moment. The first was, that's who I want to be. If we want to be courageous and we want to be in the arena, we're going to get our butts kicked. There is no option. If you want to be brave and show up in your life, you're going to fail. You're going to stumble, you're going to fall. It's part of showing up. The second thing that came to me that was, I think Steve thinks it's made me dangerous. Which is this, it's your Twitter thugs.
Okay.
The bottom line is this, if you are not in the arena also getting your butt kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback. That's it. Yeah. I mean, right. Yeah. Because the Twitter thugs, You know, I think there are a lot of cheap seats in this community, in this world, where you can sit back, never risk anything, and just throw criticism at people who are trying. You know, and the last one is, this is everything I've learned about vulnerability over 12 years of studying. Vulnerability is not about winning, it's not about losing, it's about having the courage to show up and be seen. It's about willingness to say, look, I don't have all the answers. This is daring greatly for me. I'm wearing false eyelashes. And my biggest fear when they put them on was like, am I gonna get halfway through this thing and be like I can't do it?
And if you do, just rip the whole thing off. That's happened to me before.
Oh.
Just rip them both off, and there you are, naked before the world.
You may
That
see
happens.
it here today.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think, you know, people tell me all the time, I don't want to be vulnerable, I don't want to do this, because I can't bear this. And I think being vulnerable feels dangerous, and I think it feels scary, and I think it is terrifying, but I don't think it's as dangerous, scary, or terrifying as getting to the end of our lives and wondering, what if I would have shown up? What if I would have said,
You got
I love you
amen out of
back?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, to me, is what daring greatly is.
And that's, I mean, you know, that's what I feel this work is. And when people come to these sessions to hear me speak and to work with me, I feel like that's who you are. You're daring greatly, because I know, been there, done that, got the scars from being a NICU nurse for 30 years. It's hard work, and there are lots of naysayers out there that are going to push you back and make it more difficult for you to do the right work. And so what I'm hoping is that these next few slides are going to give you some really cool strategies to try and address that in a meaningful, transformative way. You ready for this, guys? So there are these habits, right? There are these really cool habits that people that are successful with improvement work cultivate and develop. And the habits are really, it's the outer ring, okay? I think I have a thing for fives, because there are 5 core habits for improvers. There's 5 core measures. I got a 5 thing going. But it's about learning how to influence people. Influencing people isn't by putting your finger in their face and going, you need to do this, blah, 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 blah. That's not influencing people. Influencing people is engaging them and helping them see the bigger picture and helping them see the opportunity that's within them, reconnecting with their passion and their purpose. It's having resilience. It's being optimistic. Even though you are working with 5 Barbaras in your room today, you are resilient, and you are not going to let it affect you. Is anyone in here named Barbara? So Barbara is just my made-up name of the grumpy Gertie that lives in everybody's NICU around the world, who's always the one that's pushing you back and making it more difficult to do the good work that you want to do. That's who Barbara is, okay? But you need to cultivate a sense of resilience. You need to keep your eye on the prize. And what the prize is excellence in service. It's excellent care. It's being creative. So I had this amazing opportunity to work with the staff of the NICU at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. We did a 3-year program. It's called my Quantum Caring Program, and it's all about adopting the 5 core measures into the culture of care, measurably and sustainably and all that kind of stuff. And so we were doing a whole bunch of different projects, and this team was so creative in how they were engaging the staff. Everybody loves a raffle, right? Everybody loves little stickers. Everybody loves different little ways of making the environment look inviting, look exciting. And so they would have, when they did their kangaroo care initiative, they had little kangaroos everywhere. They had like little, this other group made little colorform kangaroos. You remember colorforms? Some of you are too young, but the little sticky things that aren't really sticky, but they stick. They would put a little kangaroo on the incubator of babies who met the eligibility criteria for kangaroo care in their policy. And they did that because it's not just that baby's nurse who's responsible for facilitating kangaroo care, right? Because maybe that nurse goes on lunch break or something, and the parents come in. That baby should still be able to have kangaroo care. It's those kinds of things. So it's about having creativity. It's being a systems thinker, knowing that change is constant, and learning, reflective, coming to these kinds of sessions So you guys are already starting to cultivate those habits of improvers. And it's those habits that really help you start your journey in transforming and engaging your colleagues in doing the good work that you know needs to be done, that can be done. And so I bring you to this slide. This guy, Simon Sinek, does this really, he did a TED Talk, he's written a book, super brainiac, super inspirational dude, whose whole thing is about the why you do what you do, right? And if you start with why, nobody's going to say, they'll be like asking you, okay, so Mary, why do you do the work that you do? Not because it gives me a steady paycheck. I do the work that I do because when I was a bedside nurse, I could touch 3 to 5 patients, right? It depended on my assignment. Then I became a nurse practitioner, and then my touch went a little bit bigger, right? I'd have like maybe 8 to 12 patients that I touched. Then I did the education thing, and that's when the light bulb went off, and I realized, oh my goodness, how many lives now am I touching, right? By educating all of these people. So the why is, for me, is really about touching the lives of people that are going to touch the lives of other people, and it just kind of keeps spreading out because we're going to make this world a better place. We're going to transform these little individuals who have been stuck in a trajectory of chronic hospitalization, chronic morbidities, psychopathologies, all this other kind of stuff. But my why is getting to change that, and I get to change that with you guys. You think somebody's going to say, yeah, nah, I don't want to make it better for people. No way. People don't do that, right? So you have to connect with your why. Why does this matter to you guys? And use that to engage your colleagues. Because no one's going to say they don't want to make it better for the patient. No one's going to say, no, I actually want it to be more painful. I think we're doing too much pharmacological pain management, right? No one's going to say that. So connect with that why. Identify what it is for you, because it has to also be genuine. It has to really emanate from your soul. Why are you a nurse? Why are you a therapist? And why do you work with this unique patient population? And, people generally say, oh, it's a steady paycheck, blah, blah, blah. But is that really why you would do this? Uncover it, discover it. And when you have that under wraps, you then look at the how. Now, how am I going to operationalize my why? How am I going to do the why? And what are the things that I have to express then? That's your PDSA bit for that extension. So, and what we know then, when we have, and this is just a reminder slide, okay, but when we have that level of engagement and empowerment with folks, and everyone's jazzed up and reconnected with their purpose and their passion, then it becomes actually a happy workplace. That talks to the bean counters and the C-suite, because staff engagement, frontline engagement, is a huge item on their dashboard and stuff. I don't know what they get for it, but it's a good thing. They get retention, right? They get retention and recruitment. Hey, I want to work there because their frontline staff are really change makers, and they're making things happen and making it better and living their purpose. How wicked cool is that? And this, is also supported by this whole big movement now with IHI, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, that is really, these are the guys, right, that they've championed this whole thing about change, right? How we change healthcare, how we make it better, how we reduce costs, how we improve quality, and looking at population health. Well, we serve a population, right? So we're part of that initiative from the IHI, and they keep digging deeper and digging deeper. They develop the model for improvement. So this is how you do it. These are the tactics, but that's not a guarantee. So they're scratching their heads saying, "Well, gee whiz, I gave them tools. Why isn't it happening?" Because you got to give deep. You got to dig deeper. You've got to get to people's soul purpose of why do I want to change? Because you know what, changing stuff is hard. It's hard, and it makes it difficult, and it takes a long time, and I'm not an expert anymore, and I don't really like that feeling. There's lots of things that are challenging. And what they've discovered is, if you get to the why, if you get to their soul's purpose, if you help them discover, the frontline clinicians discover or rediscover their joy in work, it is a game changer like you can't even believe. And so then all those initiatives become part of the stuff that fills up their cup and makes them feel awesome that they are making a difference. Because that's, at the end of the day, what everybody wants. Everybody wants to leave a legacy of something that they've done that's noble, that's beautiful, that's connected to their soul's purpose. And so the IHI, and they have a lovely white paper out about this, so if you go on the IHI's website, and it's free and stuff. And you just put in the search, the framework for joy. You can download this. It's brilliant. And this bit here is speaking to the leadership. What are those steps? And remember now, when I use the word leader, I'm not talking about a necessary title. We have formal leaders and we have informal leaders. You're all leaders by being here, to listen to me and to become the change, to begin that transformation. So these are also bits, once you rediscover your why and you want to connect with the why of other, start talking to them about it. What matters to you? What gets you jazzed up? What gets you excited about the work that you do? Identify unique impediments to the joy. Commit to a systems approach. You know, sometimes people aren't joyful because of the stuff that we've already talked about, that there's bullying, there's disruptive behavior, there's no sense of value, you know, there's no accountability. I hear that more often than not. And accountability, you know where accountability is right when you walk into an environment. I'm going to tell you a quick story. So when I was working with a group, I came in, and I love coming into NICUs. It's just like so wicked cool. I get to see, you know, like new designs, new spaces, meet new people. It's really awesome. And so this one gal, she says, we're so happy you're here. Would you walk around our unit and tell us what you think about our unit? So I'm like, yeah, sure, of course I will, you know. And so I walk in, and I right off the bat, I come in and I come over here, and there's a big bustle going on here with these two nurses working on a new baby. And well, I didn't know he was a new baby. I just said, what's going on here? And she said, oh, new baby. We just got an admission. And I'm like, okay. And I'm looking at the setup, and it was, you know, the baby was like, you know, sick, but not like dying or anything. And on the foot of the bed, you know, I think it was a giraffe, right? So it was like on the foot here, there was a sticker, tapey, that said contact precautions. No, is it contact precautions? What's universal precautions? Yeah, contact precautions, right? Right there. And I'm like, okay. There's two nurses working on the baby. One nurse is wearing gloves. The other nurse is not wearing gloves. And I'm like, this is weird. So I said, why? Why is he on precautions? She says, oh, we do that for all new admissions, you know, to rule out MRSA and stuff. We just put them on precautions until they rule out, and then we go wherever the direction tells us. I'm like, okay. So I'm scratching my head trying to think, why is that chick not wearing gloves then? This is not making sense to me. So I thought, you know what, I don't even really want to deal with it, you know, because this is like the first bed space I'm seeing as I just come in. I'm like, I'm just going to walk around, and then I'll come back. She'll be wearing gloves, or she'll be gone, and all will be right with the world, and I don't have to deal with it. I was having an accountability crisis as well. So I walk all the way around, checking out the unit, and I come on back. Sure enough, there's the two nurses, the gloved nurse and the ungloved nurse. And then it hit me. I was meeting their Barbara. I was meeting that nurse in that environment who thinks, you know, she's the bee's knees, and everybody else is terrified to confront her. Because there was also a box of non-sterile gloves on that tray in the back, you know, on the table there. I'm thinking, I just don't understand this at all. And so, of course, you know, I did struggle with the accountability bit, but I did say, I just want to mention to you that something's wrong with this picture. Maybe you can figure it out, you know, kind of, where's Waldo? Please don't make me point fingers at people. And right in that moment, that told me about what the level of accountability is in that unit, that it was down here. You know, I mean, if you're in a bedside with somebody who's not compliant with an OSHA mandated practice, there's a problem here. And no matter how scary that chick is, it's the baby, and it's all the other babies. I mean, if she's not going to wear gloves, is she going to wash her hands? What else isn't going to happen? And I know it sounds little, and I mean, but it's big, right? I mean, you guys see the magnitude of this, right? And I mean, the young girl was probably thinking, I'd rather have my nails ripped out of my fingers than confront this chick, because she'll just chew me up and spit me out. But that's the problem. That's, you know, where our opportunities are for improvement in really addressing this and taking that bar and saying, no, it's up here. This is how we operate here. It's all about excellence, and let the chips fall where they may. It's not about a warm body, right? It's about the right body. And shifting that mindset away from, we'll take anybody. You got a pulse? Come on down. We'll hire you. To, I'm sorry, but you need to be compliant with these best practices. And that will cultivate joy, because you know everyone else in the place is pissed off that this chick has been doing this and riding roughshod over the environment for decades. You all know what I'm talking about, right? I know you do. And so connecting with the why and that amazing honor that it is for us to be part of the most intimate experience in human life. Becoming a parent, becoming a family. And things are rocky and things are scary. And you want to be a part of that in a positive way, right? That's the why. How? The how is then those tactics, right? The PDSA bit. It's those strategies for testing changes. And then the what is really, so you're going to, the how, identify the how of what you're going to do, and then the what is, what are your next steps? And the meaning of things lies not in the things themselves, but in our attitude towards them. You can be the crispiest critters, but you can make a difference, and that will change your level of compassion fatigue in a blink of an eye, in a moment, right? It's just amazing stuff that we get to do. It's so wicked cool.
There's an African-American song, 19th century, which is so great. It says, when it looked like the sun wasn't gonna shine anymore, God put a rainbow in the clouds. Imagine. And I've had so many rainbows in my clouds. I had a lot of clouds. But I have had so many rainbows. And one of the things I do when I step up on a stage, when I stand up to translate, when I go to teach my classes, when I go to direct a movie, I bring everyone who has ever been kind to me with me. Black, white, Asian, Spanish-speaking, Native American, gay, straight, everybody. I say, come with me. I'm going on the stage. Come with me, I need you now. Long dead, you see? So I don't ever feel I have no help. I've had rainbows in my clouds. And the thing to do, it seems to me, is to prepare yourself so that you can be a rainbow in somebody else's cloud. Somebody who may not look like you, may not call God the same name you call God, if they call God at all. You see? I may not eat the same dishes prepared the way you do, may not dance your dances or speak your language, but be a blessing to somebody. That's what I think.
And she's right, because she's Maya Angelou. She's brilliant. And that's what we get to do. That's the work that we get to do. And so, the other part of the work that we are invited to do is also to be mindful of how do we take care of ourselves. And that whole reflective piece, creating and sustaining change begins with an understanding of who I am, who you are, and knowing that. Nobody should be like a robot. We don't need any robot clinicians. We need authentic healing presence in these situations that are crisis for families, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we all get to go home. And I'm sure, everybody's got stuff going on at home, but you're not in the hospital, you're not in a life and death situation. Not that it's not a competition, but these people don't get to go home right away, and they have to deal with a lot of stuff. And so understanding who you are and why you do this work. And you cannot give what you don't know. And that's really tapping into that whole concept of empathy. It's not about sympathy and feeling sorry for other, but it's feeling with and engaging with them and understanding how bad this must really be. And maybe I can't connect with it, but I'm just grateful that I can be here with you and be some sort of comfort for you. And I loved her analogy about the clouds and the rainbows. So what clouds come into your life? Just being a regular human being, not even being a healthcare professional. And what were the rainbows? And in knowing that, gives you that insight into how you can empathize with that experience of that family in that critical situation. You cannot give what you do not have, though. You cannot. You cannot bring your A game if your cup is half empty. And so how do you care for yourself? And one of the things you're doing right now is coming to this, is trying to get more knowledge, make connections with other folks. You're all on the same journey, I hope after this, you know, that whole idea of tribe learning, that you connect and stay connected with each other and bounce ideas off each other. You know, it takes a village. And the village doesn't have to be in one unit. You know, the village is like everywhere, right, on this journey. All right. So one of the things that I just want to kind of like give you as you're transitioning to, you know, leave the workshop and everything are just some 5 essential strategies about transforming care in the NICU. How do you make change stick? It's kind of like not worth it if you don't know how to make it stick. You know, a lot of improvement work, a lot of change initiatives. There's fast and furious coming out of the chute, and people are all jazzed up. And then when folks stop monitoring, stop measuring, stop keeping it top of mind, then you'll see this big backslide. Has anyone ever seen this? Lots of different practice initiatives, okay? And so hopefully this will just kind of give you some tips that will help minimize that reality, because there will be backslides. It's just the nature of the beast. But you can manage that by implementing these 5 strategies. And I want to just kind of remind you again, why is this so wicked important? Why are these changes so relevant, not just for us as professionals and for our patients, but for the future as well? Is because we know, this was a recent report now that's telling us that there are babies that are being delivered at lower and lower gestational ages. And these individuals are surviving. And survival, of course, is lovely, but it's not so awesome when it's not accompanied with thriving and with a really enhanced quality of life. And we see this, our rehab colleagues see this way more than we do as nurses. And so we know that, we see that, and again on the right side, I really kind of addressed that earlier this morning, that these individuals are at a higher risk for psychological pathology, and that this stuff is quality of life disruptors. It's heart-wrenching what you see these individuals go for. So stay grounded in the why, stay grounded to what is the reality of these patients and how we really can transform their lives, both in the short term and the long term as well. Create a vision for your future. And that's really the aim. But really consider creating like a vision statement for what it is that you guys do in your unit. The folks at CHOA, they created a vision statement that was just so impactful. It was touch a life, impact a lifetime. And that became their tagline for the developmental care initiative. And you can do that. You know, developmental care oftentimes just gets kind of lost in all of the other frenzied, adrenaline-injected activity that is just the nature of the beast in the NICU. Create something that really calls out your commitment to the humanitarian dimensions of the service that you provide. Adopt an evidence-based approach. That is going to give you the mileage that you need to be able to transform the care experience. It's not just because I think red hair is pretty. There's actually evidence that shows red-headed people are more productive in their lives. There really isn't, but you know what I'm saying, all right? You want to make sure that the work that you're doing is grounded in evidence. And if there isn't any evidence, but you feel really passionately and maybe there's some secondary information that says this actually may be a good thing, don't let that hold you back from initiating a feasibility evaluation of a new practice. One gal wanted to use colostrum as a lubricant for a feeding tube. It's not been documented in the literature. You don't think that there'd be any harm or foul with it, but you need to do a test. You need to do a safety test. So don't let the absence of it hold you back, but make sure that you're making a contribution then to that through safe evaluation. Effectively implement cultural change. And that's the next step after you've done your tests of change. And I hope that you feel pretty comfortable about the work that you need to do before you roll it out and say, starting Monday, we're going to do kangaroo care for all heel sticks. People will go apoplectic and they'll stone you out of the NICU. Don't do it. You need to be slow and steady. You eat that elephant one bite at a time. Test it, tweak it, check in with Barbara, all right, before you roll it out, all right? Because you want to be successful. Anticipate obstacles and overcome objections. And that's, again, part of this testing of the change. Remember when you were having the discussions about the coins? Who knew? But you were coming up with all these other different ways of looking at what was going on. That's what you need to do. You need to understand, what are they going to say that's going to push back? And make sure, you won't have the answers to everything. And that's why you want to do a little side test. Check in with the naysayers. See, does this answer all of your concerns for safety? And then go back. Don't roll it out yet until you really feel that you've addressed all these obstacles. And it's not to say that it's going to be 100% guarantee, right? But you'll at least be further along towards your successful goal. And invest in the personal transformation. And that coming here today, that's what you did. I am completely honored and grateful that you guys are that committed to excellence and that committed to your professional practice. I remember I think it's now about a year and a half. So as you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a former nurse practitioner. I'm trying to do this thing where I can really help my colleagues be the best version of themselves and really do the good work that I know that they can do. And so another friend of mine was doing this business coach. And she's like, you should do this, and all this. And I was thinking, just like a nurse, I don't need anybody's help. I can do this all by myself. And that's a lot of money. I just don't think I can do that. And I went back and forth. And I really just, kind of listened to myself and said, I'm going to just do it. I'm just going to try and see what happens, okay? And it's amazing what happens when you make that kind of investment in yourself. It's like overwhelmingly empowering, and the journey that I have now taken, I mean, obviously, I benefited from this coaching, and I'm still a neophyte, but I'm on the path. But it took that time and that reflection to say, I'm worth this. I'm worth making myself better, because the better that I do my job, the better I can help other folks do their job. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, and it doesn't have to be a huge investment. Just invest in yourself by giving yourself more self-care, right? Expanding your education, what you're doing. Listen to yourself. You guys all have the power to be transformational. I know it because I've worked with your colleagues, I've worked with you, and I see how you are so gentle when you approach the patients, that you really care, you have a conversation with them. Take that power and spread it across your team using these principles and more. You can do it. You can. You just need to have the courage, and as Brene said at the beginning, dare greatly. This new program that I want to tell you about really came on the heels of working with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. So we spent 3 years together. Imagine being with me for 3 years, right? God bless them all. And I would make quarterly visits, and their whole goal, and they did it, they adopted the 5 core measures into their culture of care. And after about a year of me, I was like, you have my blessing, you did a great job, bye, see you in the journals, kind of a thing. I kept in touch with them, and my colleague, my point person there, was like, gee whiz, Mary, I don't know what's going on, but we're kind of backsliding a little bit, like I had said. It's almost like when you came, I was like the principal, and so everybody was a flurry of activity. Mary's coming on Wednesday, oh my gosh, we said we were going to do all this stuff. And I thought, okay, I mean, cool, but I feel like a measure of my success is that I teach you how to fish, right? I mean, I can bring you fish, but do you know what I'm saying? And so I didn't feel like I was really maximizing the service that I wanted to deliver to the folks that I get to work with. And so while I was doing that business coaching thing, I met this other chick, Mel, and she's from Scotland. And she is a certified high performance coach. And I was like, that sounds radical, okay? What is it? And so she starts talking to me about what she does. And she really focuses on mindset. She focuses on cultivating courage and competence, and that personal transformation bit. And so I was like, wow. And she said, well, what do you do? So I told her what I did, and she was like, wow, So, I mean, because she's a business chick and I'm a healthcare person. And so I said, I'm doing this work, and is there any chance you'd like to work with me? Because I feel like you're the missing piece. Because I was focusing on the evidence and the process and all this stuff, which is wicked important, but I really wasn't paying attention to the personal growth, right? That sense of I can do this, and cultivating clarity and developing really good visions and plans and all that other kind of stuff. I'm growing in that, but that's all good, and she rocks at that. So we partnered together to put together this program called Quantum Leap. You'll notice a theme with my services. It's all about quantum, because I feel like if you know anything about quantum physics, and even if you know nothing about it, you've heard the word, and it's basically, we're all connected, right? At our most molecular, not even beyond that, our most atomic level, we are all connected. We are just all these swirling, interconnected balls of energy that are on this journey to make a difference. And when you guys were talking about how parents say they can feel the negative energy in the unit and stuff, and they don't want that negative energy by their baby, and you had mentioned the same thing, that's what we bring to the experience. And we need to be in tune with that energy so that we can manage it and be more effective in our interactions, obviously with our patients, but with our colleagues and with the families and stuff. And so that's my quantum thing. It's that connectivity. And the leap is just what it means. It's taking a leap, right? It's making that investment and having the courage to do that. So we're running a pilot right now, and it's been wicked exciting to see the transformation happening in these individuals and getting really good feedback. And so we're doing another launch the end of April, and the program will start in May. And I just wanted to share this stuff with you. And you know, I think I keep alluding to this, but I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the work that we do here, it's multiplied by millions, right? There are Nicu clinicians all over the planet that are dealing with the same challenges. Trust me, I've been over to the EU, I've been over up to Canada, I've been around, I haven't been to Asia yet, but that's on my list. But we're all struggling with the same challenges, and isn't it an awesome opportunity to really just create a movement that is going to transform the lives of these babies and families and transform the future of our planet. And we get to be part of that. Because just to steal from Choa, we touch lives and we impact lifetimes every single day we go to work. And so these are some of the program outcomes about creating visions, designing high impact changes, working through not just the testing of change, but the implementation phase as well, anticipating obstacles and creating those transformations. Because I'm sure everyone in this room has had an experience where you've had that special encounter with an infant in a family, and it fills your cup up in that one moment, you know, and it's the smallest thing that you might not even notice. And it may not even be in the NICU, right? Remember, have you ever had that experience where you go to the supermarket and you're just pushing your buggy around the supermarket and some woman comes hustling up to you and goes, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to see you. You have no idea how you touched our lives. We still talk about you. It was so lovely. You were just the most caring, compassionate person." And you're just like, you know, kind of stunned a little bit and taken aback, and of course you don't remember them, but you don't want them to know that you don't remember them. So you're like, "Oh yes, and how is the little one?" Because you don't know if it's a boy or girl, and they just share and everything, and I just gave myself goose flesh, because you give yourself goose flesh, and you're like, "Oh my gosh," and then they leave, and you're kind of like, I don't remember them from Adam, but look at the impact that I had in a moment that was nothing to me, but was everything to this person. That there's magic in that, and it's a huge privilege. It's a huge honor. It has 2 tracks. It's the science track, which I'm all about, and Mel's doing the soul, although I feel like I am getting more soulful as I age. It goes over 6 months. I have a group call on the science track, and then I have one-on-ones, 2 one-on-ones each month with the participant, and Mel does 2 soul calls a month, and that's it. I just wanted to throw it out to you. You know, I want you to think about this, and email me if this sounds like it's up your alley, and if you're scared about this, that's a good thing, because it means you're taking it seriously, and investing in yourself is a serious decision. You're ready to invest and reach the next level of your potential. There's so much growth that we have, but yet so many of my colleagues I see still kind of doing that automatic pilot care, whether they're a physician, a nurse, a therapist, or whatever. And it doesn't have to be that way. And it can't be that way. We really need to start drawing the line in the sand and saying that's an unacceptable performance. This is the name of the program, and I'd invite you to visit my website, caringessentials.net, and up in the far right-hand corner you'll say the Take the Leap. And there's more information there. You can set up an interview. We do have an application process for it and stuff. Because again, you know, I want folks to be part of it that really are committed to making that kind of an investment in themselves. So, and I just want to thank you guys again. I'm really honored. Please keep in touch. If there are other resources that I've handed out today that you would like a copy of, just shoot me an email. All right, I'm happy to share stuff. Right? Knowledge is power, sharing is caring. I'm all about sharing the power to care, all right? And I think that's it. That's all I've got for you. So again, I want to thank everyone here in the room for being with me. I want to thank all the folks that have joined us through the viewing option, and just leave you with these last few words. Inspire, empower, transform. Thank you so very much. Sing out for any questions, all right? Okay.